Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be reviewing the 2020 Intel MacBook Air. So this MacBook is the last Intel MacBook that came out. So after this was the Apple Silicon transition. For those of you who have not seen my other videos, there's a backstory that I got this MacBook around 3 months ago for a YouTube video, and I've been using it mostly for a lot of daily activities. Of course, the 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro has been my daily driver, but for the 3 months I've put aside my M1 MacBook Pro. I've only used it for editing, and I've used the 2020 Intel MacBook Air full time just for this review, and I've got some thoughts about it. So let's get started into the video. So here's the MacBook. Let's plug this out. I wanted it to be at 100% for this review so that it will be a fair review. Okay guys, so now we are inside of the Mac, and now firstly, for those of you guys who don't know, it's always a tradition in this channel to always start off with the Geekbench test. So let's start off with that. Before we do any test, let's take a look at technical specifications. So this is a 2020 Intel MacBook Air. Like I said, it's an Intel Core i3 with 8GB of RAM and Intel Plus Iris graphics, and the storage is 256 GB. And now we've taken a look at technical specifications. Let's open Geekbench. Geekbench is open, and yep, like we saw, Core i3, 8GB of RAM. For the Geekbench test, we are going to run two tests. One is the CPU and one is the compute test. So let's get started. This is the CPU. Let's click run CPU benchmarks, and now let's wait for it to complete. Okay guys, the test is done and we have our results here. We got 1082 for single core and 2148 for multi-core. I always see in a lot of my videos, the Geekbench doesn't tell us much. It's just a basic benchmark. So now we have seen the results of the CPU Geekbench. Now it's time to close this and we're gonna run our Geekbench compute. Oh, and before that, I'm to check the battery check, and it's still at 100%. So now we are at Geekbench compute, so it's running. Now let's wait for it to be done. And there we have our results, and it shows a 5596 OpenCL score. So this is a compute score. So this is the overall result for this Mac. So we just saw the Geekbench scores for the Intel MacBook Air here, and I want to talk about my usage for this MacBook. So I want to talk about what I used it for. This MacBook for me was mainly used for watching YouTube videos, and of course for Zoom meetings and for my schoolwork and basic web browsing, like just using the Safari to search something or just using the Google. Nothing too graphics intensive. And as for the battery life of this MacBook, I charge it every 3 days once if I'm not using it. It doesn't drain battery that easily. Of course, that is because my Bluetooth and Wi-Fi are always turned off, and that is a big contributing factor to the battery health. But of course, when I use this MacBook, like for example, if I have meetings, Zoom meetings, or if I have work on this MacBook, if I use it, it dies within 1 day. And as for Zoom meetings, it drains battery really quickly, so I gotta charge it after every single meeting. So if I start at 100% and I go on for a 2 hours Zoom meeting, then the battery goes down to around 20 to 30%, and I gotta charge them. When I watch YouTube videos, this MacBook gets very hot, but that is when I watch like long movies or if I watch shows on Netflix. Then of course the MacBook runs for around 2 to 3 hours, and of course the Mac gets very hot and the fan starts spinning in. That isn't really hot when compared to my Zoom meetings. Sometimes after my meetings end, I do put some wet tissue on top of my MacBook just to cool it down instantly, because it's so hot to the touch that I gotta use a cloth to take it and put it. But even though the MacBook gets hot easily, after the graphics intensive or after the task that was draining a lot of battery has ended, the heat dissipation is very fast. It takes maximum 2 to 3 minutes for the heat to dissipate, and the MacBook is back to its original temperature. That's a good thing because you can instantly start using a MacBook again after it cools down. So the so-called downtime of the MacBook is actually 2 to 3 minutes. So it isn't really a big deal. Even if a MacBook is hot, you can just rest it for around 2 to 3 minutes and you're good to go. We just did a test for the CPU and GPU, so I just want to talk about the thermal throttling issue. For me personally, I never had any thermal throttling issue on this MacBook. That is mainly because I have always used it for light activities, never really pushed it to its limits, or never really did any graphics intensive tasks. So I never had any thermal throttling issues in these 3 months. And downloading apps on this MacBook, it's also very fast. I've never felt like it was taking too long to download apps, but of course the contributing factor is the Wi-Fi or the internet that we are connected to, but the MacBook also plays a part. These 3 months I never had any hiccups or any lags when I'm downloading any apps. So now guys, let's play some HDR content and do some screen tests on this MacBook. Now here we have some HDR content. Let's play it. Okay, so as for now, the screen looks pretty good. So to test specifically for the blooming issue, I've played some dark content here, like some really high contrast content. Now let's increase the brightness to full. And let's check for blooming. And now you guys have seen some HDR content and you've tested for some blooming issues, but for me, I've checked really well and there isn't any blooming issues. But if you guys did see any blooming issues or any problems, just do leave in the comments below, because sometimes I might have seen it wrongly. So now we're done with this screen. Now it's time for the speaker test. So let's go. So here we have some NCS. So let's play it. Those were some really good speakers. That was really loud, and to be really accurate with the sound, I did turn off the noise removal for that particular duration of that clip when the NCS was playing. Even though those were really good speakers, the speaker did muffle for me once. It was once just for a while. It wasn't really a big issue, but in these 3 months the speaker muffled once. Just want to say that here. Now it's time for the SSD test. For the SSD speed test, we've got our Blackmagic this speed test here. So before we fire up the SSD speed test, I want to say that this is also my first time doing this test, so I'm going to see the results together with you guys. So let's go, click start. There we go, it's running. Let's wait. Test is done and we're getting a constant reading of in between around 1069 megabytes of write and 1381 megabytes of read. That isn't really a very fast SSD, but I guess it does get this job done well due to the optimization of macOS. Although this test results weren't really that high, the macOS optimization has really increased the SSD speed, and of course downloading any other apps or files has been really fast. I can never complain about the SSD speed because I never had any hiccups or anything. So the other day I downloaded 2 gigabytes of file and it took me around less than a minute, around 50 seconds. Just doesn't have anything, but the real world usage and the macOS optimization has really made the SSD look fast. So now on to the last test, the graphics test. For this test we will be using Cinebench. So let's click the start button. So it has started to run and the test is 9 minutes 50 seconds if you guys can see it here. So let's wait for it to be done. Okay guys, so just a small update here. It's been around 15 minutes and the test is still running, and as you guys can see here it shows 00 minutes, but the test is still running. And as for the fans on this MacBook Air, the fans here are just running at full speed. They are blasting out. It's actually fun to hear the fan spin after a long time, since I have never heard the fan spinning on my M1 MacBook Pro. It's actually quite fun.
One eternity later.
And now guys, after 20 minutes the test is finally done. It shows 1459 points, and if you take a look at the graph below, this is the lowest compared to all the other processors, the Intel Core i7 and the AMD Ryzen and all other processors. Well, of course, this isn't a surprise to us, since this MacBook is a Core i3, just 8GB of RAM and just a normal Intel Iris graphics. And during the whole duration of this test, the fans were blasting at full speed and they instantly turned off once the test was done. So now it's time to do some real world graphics testing. We are done doing the test for the graphics, but now it's time to go on to some real world tests, and by that I mean playing some graphics intensive games. And for today's graphics test, we are going to be playing Asphalt 8. So let's go. Asphalt 8 is open. Let's start with the game. So now starting off is quite smooth. Okay, there we have a knockout. There we go, second knockdown. So as for now, the game is quite smooth and there's no lag and stuttering. Okay, of course I did cool the laptop down before going on to the test. Going smooth as of now. No hiccups or anything. Game is running smoothly. The fans are blasting at full speed like we would expect, and I don't know if you guys noticed it or what, but towards the end I slowed down the car and there was a bit of stuttering. I don't know if you guys saw that or not, because it was a really minor stuttering. And as for the keyboard here, it's super hot like we would expect. Of course, like we all know, MacBooks aren't meant for gaming, but it's just a test, and the fans started blasting within just 1 minute of going inside the game. Of course, the MacBook started thermal throttling and there was a bit of lagging and thermal throttling towards the end of the race. For the weight of the MacBook is quite heavy, and of course this is an Intel chip, so it's gonna be heavy, and since it's heavy, I didn't really carry it around anywhere. This was mostly used on desk, just for basic use. I didn't bring it outside for school or anything because this MacBook is a really heavy one. And of course, speaking of heat and portability, this MacBook gets 2 times hotter when you connect it to an external display. So I've connected to an external display a few times just to test it out or just to watch content, And using a cooling pad when you're connected to an external display is a must, because this MacBook tend to get very hot when you connect them to an external display. And for those of you thinking of getting this MacBook as your daily driver, of course you can get it. Intel chips aren't really that bad, but if you guys get it at a good deal around $700 to $800, or if you guys get it at a price, then yeah, you should go for it. But for me, I got it around $1,050, and if you spend another $50 or $200, you can just get the M1 MacBook Air. But for those of you who want to use specific apps that are on Intel, then you gotta go for the Intel chip. If you get it at a deal at around $700 to $800, then I guess it's a good deal. You should just go for it. But in the end, like I say in all my videos, it depends on your needs. So yeah guys, I hope this review was useful to you and helping you in deciding which MacBook you should get, or if you should get the 2020 Intel MacBook Air or anything else. I hope I have addressed a lot of issues here. This review is mainly on my experience using the MacBook. So I hope you guys like it, and more than liking it, I hope this was useful to you guys and it was helpful to you. So yeah guys, that's been it for this video. I think we've come to the end of this video, and if you guys like this video, do remember to click the like button and do remember to subscribe to this channel. That would really mean a lot to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.